Hello and welcome to The Point After. I'm Nate Wimberly, joined today by Charlotte Observer writer Alex Zetlow. I got that right?
Yeah, you got it right.
There you go. Oh, man, he's been busy all week. You know, he started off covering the Carolina Panthers OTAs, and that busy week will continue with NASCAR at Charlotte Motor Speedway this weekend. Man, what's up, Alex? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Let's start with NASCAR and the All-Star race. Yes, Joey Logano won. Everybody kind of forgets that, but because everybody is talking about the fight between Kyle Busch and Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and there is no one better to ask about this fight than Alex right here. Why, you ask? Well, Alex was in the middle of it, and I do mean the middle of it. Need proof? Bam, roll that video right here. The guy in the middle right there in front of Kyle Busch's face is this young man right here. Alex, man, what were you thinking as this was about to happen and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. looking like Canelo Alvarez, throwing hands, connecting with a right hook? Man, what was you thinking?
Okay, well, firstly, when I see that video, my first thought isn't what was I thinking. It was, what do I look like, man? I look like a little brother who is seeing his big brother show down with another big brother, someone his age, and being like, okay, what's going on? What's happening? So just to give a little backstory of the scene of what's going on before then, obviously we know that Kyle and Ricky get entangled. Lap 2 of the race. Ricky has to go to his hauler. He is out of the race for the rest of the time. He can't leave.
Can't leave in North Wilkesboro.
Because North Wilkesboro doesn't have a tunnel out of the infield. He has to stay and he has to stew over these emotions for probably 2.5 hours of real time. And then, so the race ends, all of media, and I mean all of it, go to Kyle Busch's spot on pit road. And we're like, okay, where is he going to go? Where is he going to walk to? He ends up not wanting to do media there. He ends up just immediately walking to his hauler. And it is like one man marching. It's like a general marching to his hauler. And little do you know, you see Ricky Stenhouse Jr. leaning over, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And then while everyone is smartly taking a video from that angle, I am like, and I'm just like, you know what, I'm just going to soak this up. I'm going to walk to the other side. I'm going to lean in, try to figure out what they're saying. And then, you know, Alex Zetlow becomes a meme. But that's how it goes. And then from there, you just kind of figure out the context. You figure out what happened, put it on a page, and press submit. Yeah,
we got some more angles of that fight. Talk about a little bit more about this and what's the benefit of this for NASCAR?
Well, so NASCAR obviously came out earlier this week and fined Ricky Stenhouse Jr. $75,000 for throwing the first punch for instigating. Kyle Busch incurred no penalties. Also, some crew members were penalized. Ricky Stenhouse's dad, Rick Stenhouse, was indefinitely suspended from NASCAR events. However, and so that is one part of it. That's something that NASCAR has to handle. The other interesting thing is NASCAR's been advertising this fight on all their social channels.
Absolutely.
They're probably going to use this to advertise for the All-Star race next year when it returns to North Wilkesboro. They're probably hoping that, hey, some fans will come out to see, hey, is there going to be more frustrations boiling over between Kyle Busch and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. So for this upcoming race in Charlotte at Charlotte Motor Speedway. So it's kind of an interesting thing. I think ultimately it's a benefit for NASCAR for reaching the casual fan, whereas, but of course there is this kind of strange dichotomy of, okay, we also can't condone fighting, we can't condone violence, etc.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. They've always had this adage of have at it, boys, and you know, they really don't want to have this, but they really do want to have this because it's going to bring more eyes to racing. And let's face it, folks, that this thing has gotten a lot of run all week long, and it has been kind of got more legs because there's another person that's getting involved in this, the owner of the number 8 car, Richard Childress. I'm going to talk about that coming up in my final thought, but this thing is getting legs. It's just going to keep walking and keep walking down the road, and folks are going to want to know, will this happen again on Sunday? So it's going to make for a very interesting Coke 600. And folks, the Coke 600 is the longest race of the year. They can have some runs where you will lose the viewership because 100 laps, 150 laps of just going fast and turning left, and it's just like, oh my gosh, can something happen? So this is a way that you're going to watch if the 8 and the 47 get close to each other. what happens?
And of course, I understand this perception of the Coke 600 is the longest race. I understand this perception of what can possibly happen over 400 laps. I mean, that's a long race. The thing is, though, with this next-gen car, they are actually pretty good at, they're really good at these 1.5-mile intermediate tracks. So the past 2 years have been really exciting, have been fun. Denny Hamlin and Chase Elliott got into it last year. So and then, of course, the Ricky Stenhouse and Kyle Busch kind of drama. There are a lot of things bubbling up at the Coke 600 this year.
Let's talk about some racing, actually. This pretty much is the halfway point of the regular season. So far, the 11, the 5, and the 24, Denny Hamlin, William Byron, and Kyle Larson have dominated the season. They've won 8 of the 13 races. What can we kind of look forward towards this second half of the season? These last couple of weeks, we had one of the closest finish in NASCAR history with Chris Buescher and Denny Hamlin, and then Buescher follows it up last week, and him and Tyler Reddick get together. So there's a lot of drama going on. What are we looking forward to coming to this second half of the season?
Well, the number one thing that I'm looking at is, will these 3 drivers just kind of continue to separate themselves from the field? The last 2 years, the next-gen era, with the new car, which has been introduced 2 years ago, if you want to boil it down, its legacy to one word, it's parity. There have been record numbers of winners in this next-gen car. But here's the thing, like, of course, when you don't have parity, you want it. When you do have parity, drivers are like, wait, now hold on, now anyone can win. And it's like, so no one's ever happy.
That's true.
So this is one instance, I think this is one interesting development in these 3 drivers in particular kind of separating themselves from the field. I think this is Joe Gibbs Racing and Hendrick Motorsports kind of flexing its might, being like, okay, we figured out this next-gen car. Our investment in the sport of racing is kind of, we're flexing that a little bit. And I think that's ultimately good for the sport of racing, to have not just it be a free-for-all, but to have, okay, here are the most recognizable, the most champion caliber guys every time you go out on track.
I'm looking forward to seeing which drivers will step up and kind of get in that mix with those 3 cars. I do believe there'll be one more car, maybe even 2, that kind of just assert themselves, like a Martin Truex Jr. He's running well, second in the points, doesn't have a win. Maybe he starts to insert himself in this thing and get some wins and say, hey, we're here too, and I'm a threat to win a championship. He's a threat right now, but you're not really a threat unless you're winning. He needs to win some of these races that he's very close in winning, and I do believe Truex Jr. will be one of the cars that does that. Possibly here at the Coke 600. We know what he did that one year where he just totally dominated, just really made it a snooze fest and won the 600. So maybe it's Martin Truex Jr. Let's jump back to the double this weekend. Kyle Larson, one of those guys that's been dominating this season. He's going to attempt to run the double this weekend. He's going to run the Indianapolis 500 Saturday around lunchtime, and then he's going to hop on a plane and fly back down to Charlotte and race in the Coca-Cola 600. Alex, how do you think he will fare? We know he's good in any car that he drives. He proved it. He qualified, 5th for the 400. What can he do it?
Well, the question, can he do it? I don't know if Alex Zetlow is the person to ask on that. I have read a lot about what other drivers have done or have said about Kyle's chances. Among them, Mario Andretti is like, yeah, he's got a chance. And this isn't just any other racer. This is Mario Andretti. I think the most important thing of this, and this might not be what every racing fan sees, but the most important aspect of all of this is the spectacle of the whole thing. Is the fact that Kyle Larson there was question, would he even make the All-Star race at some point last week, and NASCAR shifted its schedule essentially to make sure he got there. When the helicopter came in and descended on Wilkes County, everyone was fist pumping. They were like, oh my gosh, our hero has arrived. This is what, there are certain moments in sports where you're like, oh wow, this guy is the face of our enterprise. And that's what Kyle Larson has done, basically be like, hey, the fact that you're even thinking that I could pull this off, the fact that you're even thinking that I could compete in the Indy 500 and then follow that up with the longest race in NASCAR, that says something, and that says that he's a generational driver, which we all know. It also says that he is like worth talking about. He's someone who transcends NASCAR. He goes to all these other forms of motorsports and is a name for himself, and I think that's pretty cool.
Absolutely, he does dirt track racing. He does all kinds of racing, and one of the things that I heard this Zoom interview yesterday. A lot of folks were asking him, "Do you think your preparation for the 500 is going to mess with what you do on the 600?" He's like, "No, this is pretty much what I do every week." I mean, he's racing all different forms of racing, even when he's racing in his cup car. So this is just another walk in the park for him to make it. I don't want to make it sound easy because it's not, but this is what he normally does. So it's not going to take away from his preparation for the 600. He's going to be ready for the 600. The hard part is racing that 500, but it seems like he's gotten that open wheel car down pat right now.
Well, it also helps that he's in the best equipment.
Oh yeah,
but
that too.
But someone has to be able to operate that best equipment, and if no one better suited than Kyle Larson.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now let's talk a little bit real quickly about the Carolina Panthers. Week 1 of OTAs happened this week, earlier this week. We got to see the guys out there doing their thing. A lot of this week was made about Bryce Young and them working on his footwork and them doing some technical things, whereas last year's, coaching staff really didn't focus in on that. But Coach Canales and this group of coaches are really focusing on those little things, footwork, timing, and getting the ball out and things of that nature. What did you see this week as far as, Bryce and how he's looking?
The thing that struck me the most was there's never been a question that Bryce Young can handle a playbook. Yeah. There's never been a question that he can come in with new concepts, with new schemes, and be like, okay, I understand this. The question has always been, because we've only seen it in 1 year, what suits his style? And Canales coming in, probably the most important thing that anyone was looking for in hiring a new head coach was, hey, do we think that he can get the most out of Bryce? And Dave Canales has a robust history of getting the most out of quarterbacks. Yeah. You saw it in Geno Smith in Seattle. You saw it in Baker Mayfield, a guy that the Panthers couldn't get the most out of a couple years ago, and he's rejuvenated his career. And another interesting thing that I found was, and of course, again, it was day 1 of OTAs after we talked to him. This is a time of year where hope springs eternal, where good vibes spring eternal.
Everybody looks good in shorts and no shoulder pads or any pads.
But there is something to be said about the fact that Dave is a relatively young head coach. Bryce is a young quarterback. They are both of this generation where negative motivation doesn't really work on them. They kind of speak the same language. Dave Canales talks about how they speak the same language a lot. Again, good vibes spring eternal right now, but that's all kind of we got so far in Panthers world.
Yeah, it's still pretty early, and folks ask me, how are they looking? I'm like, everybody calm down. There's no pads, none of that. It's not serious football. Now this is getting a little bit closer because now, as Coach Canales talked about, those windows start. When you're throwing on air, you complete a lot of passes.
Oh, yeah.
When there are defenders out there, those windows start to shrink, especially in the NFL. As fast as defenders are, windows start to shrink. The passes start to get picked off because if you make an errant one, NFL players are going to make you play, and Bryce had a couple of those when we were out at OTAs the other day. So it's getting closer, and you're beginning to see a little bit more of what the Panthers are and who they are, but it's still week 1. We're still in May. We ain't even the training camp yet, so everybody just needs to calm down.
I think it's always interesting when you see a clip here or a clip there, particularly in training camp when fans, pull out their phones and stuff, and they're like, oh, Bryce completed a deep pass.
Yeah.
Oh, that's something he didn't do a lot last year. Well, in training camp, he completed a lot of deep passes.
DJ Chark.
We thought that was going to be like a signature part of his game. We saw him spreading the ball around, and then you kind of come to the realization of, oh, yeah, that's what quarterbacks do. You're supposed to get the ball out to a whole bunch of different places. But yeah, of course, there's still a lot to be learned. But at this point, Panthers fans, have fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Embrace this hope. Why not?
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, we've come to the end of the road, as Boyz II Men would say. My final thought, just got one, and it's Ricky called the bluff of Richard Childress. Now, I'm gonna paraphrase this a little bit. Early this week, Richard Childress, he's the owner of the number 8 car for that Kyle Busch drives, and so Richard has a lot invested in this. He doesn't want to see his car wrecked here in Charlotte. And after the fight that Ricky had with Kyle the other day, he said, hey, I'm gonna wreck you in Charlotte. Richard Childress heard that. This is what he had to say on Tuesday. If he does wreck the number 8, he is going to carry a rough rear end beating. I say rear end. He said something else.
I was about to say, is that what he said?
No, that's why I paraphrased a little bit. It wasn't a direct quote. But Richard Childress, 78 years old, said he wants the smoke. Put the 8 in the wall, he wants the smoke. I say, Ricky, call his bluff. Now, I don't condone fighting, but I guess I'm condoning fighting. So I don't know. This would definitely give the sports a lot of legs if something like that happened. Yeah. And my only drawback or wish is that Ricky Stenhouse's dad, Ricky Stenhouse Sr., how about them two, Senior and Richard Childress, go at it and not, Junior and Richard Childress? Come on, man.
Well, it was funny at the very end, like after all the dust had proverbially settled, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. does an interview with Fox, and he says, yeah, I'm kind of done. I don't really have anything else for Kyle. Of course, if we want to do a charity boxing match, that might be fun. We could, and so that was funny too. That was one fun thing about this whole thing. Again, I don't condone fighting. I don't know how many times we have to say that, but one fun thing out of it is Ricky at least seemed to have a sense of humor about it. So
we'll find out how much of a sense of humor it is on Sunday night.
Yes, racing is a different breed, a different beast, certainly.
And something else might happen because it is a 600-mile race, and the longer it goes, you rubbing up against somebody for 4.5 hours, somebody might get a little hot and get a little, disturbed. So, and they might get out the car and have a fisticuff or two. So Sunday should be very interesting. So we'll definitely be looking forward to that. Definitely looking forward to seeing if Kyle Larson can do the double. 87% chance of rain in Indianapolis. It's going to be tough for him to do it, but hopefully the rain holds off up there long enough for him to get it done, and he can get back here to Charlotte. A quick programming note here. We will not have a point after this Monday due to Memorial Day, so we will see you next Friday for the next edition of the Point After. Everybody have a good weekend, a safe Memorial Day weekend, and we'll see you next week here on the Point After. Alex, thanks for joining us. I'll see you out there at the Speedway on Sunday. See you next week for Panthers OTAs, and we will see you next Friday for the Point After. Have a good weekend.